Michael Gove names groups as he unveils extremism definition. This seems to have come about very quickly after he'd announced he was going to be looking into it. And as you can see from here, Michael Gove has identified 5 groups that are being checked to be whether they're extremist: Patriotic Alternative and British National Socialist Movement, obviously far right groups. And then we've got Muslim Association of Britain, Cage, and Mend. I didn't really know quite what this all meant, so I asked Mohammed Akunjee, who was on earlier in his standing, as I say, in Bethnal Green and Stepney. I asked him what his thoughts were on what Michael Gove had announced. And I'm just going to play this interview, and then I'm really pleased that we've got on the call. We've got Dr. Ismail Patel from Friends of Al-Aqsa, and I'm going to speak to him. So I'm just going to play this interview with Mohammed Akunjee first. Lots of stuff's been going on today, especially around what Michael Gove has been saying on extremism. This was something that had been anticipated, but it's kind of come out very quickly, as far as I'm concerned. This is a screenshot of what he's come out with. Extremism is a promotion or advancement of an ideology based on violence, hatred, or intolerance that aims to 1, negate or destroy the fundamental rights and freedoms of others, or 2, undermine, overturn, or replace the UK system of liberal parliamentary democracy and democratic rights, or 3, intentionally create a permissive environment for others to achieve the results in 1 or 2. The new definition is narrower and more precise than the 2011 PREVENT definition, which did not provide the detail we now need to assess and identify extremism. This new definition helps clearly articulate how extremism is evidenced through the public behaviour of extremists that advance their violent, hateful, or intolerant aims. I think this has come out very quickly, has it not, for a legal kind of document? I mean, to say we're going to draw something up and then within weeks, days, to come out with this. What's your view on the speed of it?
Well, it's clearly a reactionary move to the fact that the Tory party of Broadman, Gove, Cleverly, all the others, et al., they've been trying to categorise these pro-Palestinian marches as so-called hate marches, which the police have been very resistant to. The police have a legal duty to allow for a peaceful demonstration, and the idea that just because a politician says so makes it so. I think these politicians have got it into their heads that their words define reality, which of course they don't. So we quite famously saw Braverman square off with the chief of the Metropolitan Police, Mark Rowley, and she lost that. She's now no longer in Parliament. To stop these pro-Palestinian marches have meant that they've now tried to recategorize things. So famously, Braverman stated that the Palestinian flag was potentially a terrorist symbol, which of course it isn't. It's in fact a representation of British foreign policy. The UK government supports a two-state solution, so it's quite bizarre that she would say that. But this was sort of law through the back door, effectively, trying to say or indicate to the police how to interpret events on the ground. As that hasn't worked at all, then this policy that's been rolled out is to recategorize what is extremism, or try to, what Gove claims, make it more defined. It has exactly the opposite effect, and therefore stop any of these named organizations that he's now working on the full list for from engaging with the government, and that now means that there'll be no funding, there'll be no cooperation, there'll be no civic support for such organizations.
So he's kind of making a more legalese framework in which to then say this is because of this particular document that we've drawn up. These are the reasons why you're regarded as extremist.
He doesn't have to give reasons. He just creates a list. It's a bit like the whole sort of case of defining somebody as an extremist and then stripping their citizenship. You don't get to see the reasons. You just say that they're not conducive to the public good. And actually, what's quite interesting about this is that once a list is produced, in order to be taken off the list, there is no appeal process. There's no route here within the framework to be taken off. So you'd have to go to court at your expense or the organisation's expense to then challenge the Home Office's decision or Home Secretary's decision to put you on the list in the first place. Now, if you lose that, then there's also the cost implication as well, which could be in the many thousands of pounds. So effectively, once you're on the list, unless you've got very deep pockets, then you're pretty stuck there.
There was a leak in The Guardian that suggested Friends of Al-Aqsa were one of the groups. What do you think happened there? Why do you think they got some names wrong of those groups?
I don't know if they have or haven't, because he hasn't said that that's the full list. He said that the full list will be coming out in the next weeks.
Right.
What I see from that is that when he mentioned the Muslim Council of Britain, the Muslim Association of Britain is still on that list. He originally wanted to put the Muslim Council of Britain and the Friends of Al-Aqsa as well. Whether they are still there or not is yet to be seen. But for optics, they don't appear to have been mentioned as of today. And the reason for optics is because Friends of Al-Aqsa are instrumental, really, in a lot of these pro-Palestinian marches. They're part of one of the organizations that goes behind organizing them. So had he put them on the list, it would have been a very clear message that actually all he's doing, which is what no doubt he intends to do, is to attack the basis, the organizational structure of some of the organizations who are involved in putting these marches together, these rallies together.
What is the implication of being on that list? I mean, I saw a tweet from George Galloway in which he said that banks might not work with you, or that you might have problems in certain ways that could cripple the organisation, outside of anything else.
Well, the problem is this: is that if you're on an extremism list, he's absolutely right. Then, and that's published, then banks, because of their own banking rules, would see that you are a more risky venture as a client. So he's absolutely right. You might find yourself unable to open bank accounts, or even the people who are part of your organisation may then end up with that sort of problem as well in their personal bank accounts. That's certainly happened to other organisations in the past.
And do you see this as an attempt to make the support of Gaza and the support of people in Palestine as a Muslim issue rather than a general humanitarian issue? Do you think he's trying to distract the whole thing by identifying these groups, which are all have a Muslim base, I suppose?
I don't think there's ever been a human being who was born who was so mentally compromised that they'd accuse Michael Gove of being a humanitarian in any field. So anything that Michael Gove does is not born out of a humanitarian spark or spirit. So no, it's fairly clear what's happened here. The prevent definition of extremism was already criticised by the UN rapporteur 4 or 5 years ago. It's been highly criticised by every civic organisation there is. Amnesty International has said that the entire prevent strategy needs to be scrapped. And that was the previous definition. And that was basically vocal or active opposition to fundamental British values, including democracy, rule of law, individual liberty, and mutual respect and tolerance for different faiths and beliefs. But those are active opposition to fundamental British values. So you'd have to still do something or say something that is fundamentally opposed to something we could point at. If you look at the new definition, it says extremism is the promotion or advancement of an ideology based on violence. But it's ideology now. So it's what you think, not what you do, that puts you into the category of extremism, or what your philosophical underpinnings are. So this is really dangerous stuff, because at least previously, and even then, the previous definitions meant that that you'd have to be engaged in some sort of action or activity. Here, you don't have to be engaged in anything. It's just simply your ideology. That is the underpinning upon which you can be put on an extremism list.
Wow. So, as you're saying, it can be added to at any point. They can just take out another group if they wish to, without anyone to check it. That they'd have to be taken to court by that group.
Yes, I think it's important to remember that Michael Gove was instrumental in labeling a bunch of educationalists, teachers and governors up in Birmingham some years ago as Islamists, claiming that they were trying to take over a number of schools and basically implement an Islamic sort of fundamentalist ideology in them. And this was based on a fake letter. Right? This was eventually called the Trojan Horse Affair. Now, Michael Gove, in his book, Celsius 707, has got a chapter on the Trojan Horse, which predates that actual incident. And that entire incident of him labeling people extremists, Islamists, was based on a completely fake letter. And it turned out, it turned out that the whole thing was a complete moral panic. But people lost their jobs over it. And the Muslim community, the children up there, look, a generation was lost in terms of access to a good quality education because of his completely fake labeling of people. Now, this is Michael Gove. Michael Gove is now defining what extremism is so that he can basically tar anyone with it. He is the person who manipulated and frankly lied about this threat. And now he's been given total free rein to effectively say he has a magic wand, and because he feels one way or another about a group, then he will just label them as extremists. It's literally, a witch hunt.
We're joined by Dr. Ismail Patel. How are you doing?
Good morning. Thank you for having me, Crispin.
Thank you for coming on. I mean, this is quite a dramatic week for you. I guess that on this, as I say, there was a press release that went to the BBC, I think, that says that Friends of Al-Aqsa was one of the groups. And then when he spoke, they weren't one of the groups. How did you react to that?
Well, we weren't surprised for us to be on the list because we thought this would be an attack on major Muslim-led organizations, and those were at the forefront of the Palestinian issue. But I think what has happened is the stay of execution has just been extended, basically, more than anything else. I'm not anywhere deluded that we may not be added later on, as Gove himself has made it clear in Parliament that the full list will be announced in a few weeks' time. So we wait and see what happens. But in a way, this is expected from a government that has lost its debate. What has happened is we have come out and convinced the British society that we need an immediate ceasefire, supporting Israel is supporting genocide, and we should be backing the ICJ ruling. And they're failing on every account. And what they're now having to do is use the parliament privilege and undermine organizations that are exposing the government. In a way, this is very, very sinister and very worrying for everybody, that we can have today's politicians using their ideology, and let's use the definition for a change, become ideological and try and oppress people in the country. And in fact, if you look at, somebody has done a very good analysis of the new definition by Gove, which is useless, but at least Gove himself fits into that definition as an extremist, and he should be the first one to be prosecuted on that definition.
Yeah, and the fact, I mean, Friends of Al-Aqsa has been organising the protests we've covered on every one of them, and it's a big coalition of groups. I mean, that we are in solidarity, aren't we? Everyone who's opposing the genocide in Gaza, we're all in solidarity on that issue, and they are trying to divide us, aren't they?
Absolutely. I mean, we've been going for past 27 years. I mean, we didn't start on the 7th of October we've been going for 27 years. We've been every demonstration in London that has taken place in the past 27 years, including the 2 million man march. I was there. I spoke at that demonstration. We are part of that coalition. We have been part of the coalition of Stop the War. Now we have been a part of the coalition, the 6 organizations that are central to bringing the people out in London over the past 5 months. And we have always worked from right across the spectrum. We are politically active. We have parliament lobby days. We encourage our supporters and those who follow us to lobby MPs and write letters to them. So we engage in the democratic system. Yet, we have to repeat this, that what is happening here is that politicians are losing their debate. And the only way they can silence us is by using their law. And the other thing, very important, what we've discussed this morning, is we've seen independents rise up and wanting to stand. And I think that's a very good thing, because politics in Britain is constrained within a very narrow parameter of the main political parties. If you're outside of those parameters, then you're a pariah and you're targeted as an extremist. So it doesn't matter which part of the spectrum you are. And I think independents standing up will try and undermine this, if you like, copyright, this right that only those political parties and those belonging to it can stand for political views and have their views expressed in public. And we need to be able to expose that, I think. And it's very important that the independents get support. Whether they win or not is irrelevant, but they get support, and the mainstream political parties get to understand that the public will no longer accept their, if you like, dictates. And they are actually weakening democracy. Both Labour and Conservative are weakening democracy. They're weakening the people's resolve and the civil society's trust in Parliament. And that is a very dangerous thing that is happening. And they are the ones who are responsible for undermining British values more than any of the organizations that have been listed or those who are campaigning for justice and equality.
Yeah, and I just want to extend solidarity with you, because you've, whether like it was in the interview was said, and what you've just said as well, they're hanging this threat over you, and friends of Al-Aqsa. I mean, it's an appalling thing to do, and we on this show support you 100%, and will be more of us going to the protests than ever, because they're trying to silence us.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, what you say, Crispin, is being resonated across the country. The more the government attacks the protests and organizations, more people are coming out. I mean, we've been coming out for 12th national demonstration in London, and we've every time topped, over 200,000 people, the minimum. We've got up to 1 million people. More and more people are coming out. And more than that, there's now demonstrations taking place right across the country, which the main media is not even showing. But, almost like 30 or 40 cities in England today will have a demonstration for Gaza. So, the politicians are losing this debate, and they're losing the people more than anything else. And we are the ones who the people are looking towards, and the politicians, the elected politicians, cannot stomach that. And in particularly Gove and the right-wing element. Yeah.
And look, I look forward to. One day I could bump into it at a protest, but there's so many people there, I'll never get anywhere near you. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for waiting so patiently as well.
Thank you very much, Crispin. Carry on with the great work.
Cheers.